We're talking Texas A&M football on the Our Lads Football Network, Our Lads Football YouTube channel. And when we talk about the Texas A&M Aggies, that means Olin Buchanan is in the house from TexAgs.com. How's it going, Olin?
It's going all right. It's been a busy day between work and this big weekend and this big football game and
little football game.
Yeah, big one, and family coming in for the holiday. So it's been kind of crazy today.
I can imagine. Only so, doing some reading, including on your site, your most recent article about how crazy this game, as far as attendance and ticket prices, and couldn't believe that apparently it's the most expensive average ticket price on record for a college football game. Wow.
Yeah. Well, let's face it. Everything costs more these days, right?
That's true.
Oh, even the ticket for a football game. But I guess there's so much to the imagination. Not only is there a lot at stake, a trip to the SEC championship game, a chance to win the SEC championships at stake, but you have these two teams, these two programs, fan bases that I don't think it can be overstated how much they detest each other. From the Austin is a little more liberal, College Station is conservative. From politically,
wow,
every way you could imagine, they're just completely different. And Texas was always the big state school. A&M now 70,000 students, but for most of its existence, it was the little land grant university that the farmers' kids went to. So the Texas always kind of looked down on them, all those things. And now that's all out the window. Texas made a big deal when A&M left for the SEC, laughed at them, what a bad mistake they are. Now here they are coming in. Texas ended the series when A&M left, said, you're not going to play us, or not going to be in our conference, and we're not going to play you. And we'll decide when we play again. And so A&M said, okay, fine. Then when Texas wanted to renew the series, A&M said, no, we're not interested. So there's all this bitterness, 13 years of not playing and just sniping it back and forth at each other, and it's all coming back to a head. So I think a lot of people may be coming to the game, even if they can get a ticket, even if they don't necessarily have allegiance for either team, because maybe they think, some fights are going to break out. Maybe going to a NASCAR and hoping you'll see a wreck. I don't know, but it is a highly anticipated game, and obviously a lot of people are going to be in town.
Yes, perfect holiday weekend. A little bit of college football sprinkled in. You can't beat that. So this is going to be, especially for traditional college football fans like myself, this is what you watch the game for. This is what you love. You love the rivalries, and even though you don't have a stake in it, this is why you love college football. You love to see it from afar. You have your own rivalry, but you understand how important it is from your own rivalry, exactly how big these other rivalries are, especially like you said, since you haven't played for so long with so much on the line. And now Texas A&M loses the game to Auburn, and it looked like for at least a few minutes, maybe a little bit longer, that Texas A&M had lost their chance, and then they blew it. And then I guess they find out shortly after, no, you have another chance. So I got to imagine how that must feel to have that second life. Like, we screwed it up, and then just a few minutes later, really, we actually can do this, and we have to beat Texas to get there. Wow.
Yeah, I think Mike Elko called it, a gift from the football gods. And it's felt more like a reprieve from the governor, if you ask me,
Yeah.
But it wasn't just, to my knowledge, it wasn't just that Oklahoma beat Alabama.
No.
Ole Miss, Florida beat Ole Miss.
Florida, yeah.
But of course, that was earlier in the day.
Sure.
So you didn't know about the result, and then you hear, Alabama lost to Oklahoma, and so then the refrain of, thank God for Oklahoma, which has probably never been said in Texas before.
Yeah.
or will ever be said again.
Yeah. Right.
But they were all Sooners fans for that moment. Yeah, you get this thing dumped in your lap. So then you ask yourself, well, what are you going to do with it?
Yep.
Because you were at a place just 3 weeks ago, two games 3 weeks ago, that you're really at the doorstep of locking down, or the possibility of locking down a spot in the playoff
Yep.
without having to win the SEC championship, and then you lose to South Carolina. Okay, that's understandable. South Carolina is surging. It's a night game on the road in the SEC. It's never easy to win on the road in the SEC, and then you go on the road to Auburn. Yeah, I know Jordan Hare is treacherous, and Nick Saban said it was haunted. And you go in there and you get down 21-0, and before you even realize what's going on, you fight back, have the ball and the lead with 4 minutes to go, and you fumble on a shotgun snap, recovered it, but now you're second and 17, you're behind the chains. A first down probably would have, if not won it for you, put you in a great spot. Instead, you end up having to punt, and you let Auburn go down there, tie it up. And, we saw what happened. Of course, the game went in on Texas A&M, a player dropping a wide
Yeah.
to extend the game. So, A&M did everything they could to put themselves in this precarious position, and their season, for the most part, ought to be like, okay, let's play this one out, this last game out, and play for pride against Texas, and see if we're going to go to Memphis or Houston, or maybe, if you're lucky, Nashville for an obscure bowl game. And instead, here you are with a chance to get redemption against the team that you wanted against the most.
And the thing too is that the way it's looking, you would believe that if Texas A&M just gets to the SEC championship now, they're in a real good spot for the playoffs, win or lose.
I would be skeptical. Historically, in every sport, committees don't do a lot of favors.
Yeah, committees.
In fact, let me say none. I don't think A&M's ever gotten a break from a committee. And quite frankly, if they do lose the SEC championship game, you're going to be there with 4 losses. And I don't think, even if that fourth loss came in a late game, I don't think you have the right to be angry and felt like you were.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they would have no right. Yes, I agree with that.
So I think it's, hey, you got to beat Texas, and then, hey, see if you can pull it off against Georgia. Otherwise, prepare for a bowl game, and maybe if you beat Texas, you get to at least a bowl game in Florida.
I tell you what it's going to do, though, is, and a long way from this happening, but we're going to get that situation where a team maybe gets to the championship game, loses it, doesn't go to the playoffs, and a team not in the championship game gets into the playoffs.
Yeah, well, you saw Lane Kiffin, I'm sure, last week, before his team actually lost, was saying, hey, it's better for us not to be, because they had 2 losses already. It's better for us not to play in the SEC championship game.
Yeah.
I assumed he thought that they would go beat Florida, and then they would be sitting there, hey, we're 10-2. Of course we're going to the playoff. I would think Tennessee, if they beat Vanderbilt this week, they're going to be 10-2, and they're thinking, of course we're going to go to the playoffs. We don't have to, but if you went to the championship game with 2 losses, you risk getting knocked out of the national championship tournament.
Yeah.
That said, aren't we still in this? Supposed to be trying to win championships?
I thought so.
Shouldn't the conference championship mean something?
I thought so. Yeah.
Maybe. I know this is blasphemy, and you didn't ask, but maybe they ought to look into moving it, decreasing the number of teams in the playoff to 8, and say, hey, you only get in, you only get automatic if you win a championship. Yeah. So 4 other teams are going to get at larges, but it makes that winning that championship so much more important.
Yeah, because at this rate, if this happens, they might have to seriously think about nixing the championship games.
Yeah, maybe. And then it brings up the question is, do you think Georgia if they lost the conference championship game, would they get into the playoff with 3 losses? Now, Georgia might. You know why? Because they're Georgia.
Georgia.
And they've beaten Texas and they've beaten Clemson. So they got some big wins. But a team like Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama would probably be given more grace in that situation than a team like Texas A&M or Tennessee or somebody like that. I mean, we saw what happened to Florida State last year. So, certain teams get,
they do
benefit of the doubt. So, I think what would be really interesting is if you'll play along here, Texas A&M beats Texas and then beats Georgia. And then you say, well, A&M's definitely in. Now, Tennessee's sitting there at 10-2. Georgia's 10-3. Georgia has a win over Tennessee.
Well, they got to go with Georgia. They got to go with Georgia.
You would think.
I think. And this whole 2 losses versus 3, that should be. You want to play like the big boys, like the NFL, then act like it. Because the NFL doesn't care whether or not you have a win or loss, as long as you're in it, as long as you're in that top group. But then again, there's not a committee, so I don't know.
You and I are on the same page there, but I have learned never to trust a committee to do.
And you're right. You're right. But then again, it is Georgia.
But it's Georgia.
I don't think they're going to take Tennessee over Georgia. I just don't. With Georgia beating Tennessee, I don't see that happening.
I don't either, but you look at some of the recent rankings, and supposedly strength of schedule is supposed to work into it.
Yeah,
see some really high ranked teams that up until last week hadn't played anybody, and you're thinking, well, is the strength of schedule an issue or not? And I know you know this. That's why Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, was so adamant about, hey, we're not going to 8 teams or 4, automatic bids to conference, always push back against because he was saying there's more competitive teams in our conference, and it's, kind of playing out like it is right now.
Yeah.
Why should we be penalized because our teams are going to beat each other, as opposed to maybe some lesser conferences where there's not as much, okay, we know we're talking about the Big Ten, and I hesitate to bring that up since you got that big R in that. But
I'm a realist.
I see 2 really good teams in the Big Ten and 2 probably really good teams in the Big Ten. And of course, I'm talking about Oregon and Ohio State.
Yeah.
And then Indiana and Penn State.
Yeah, I think Indiana had their shot.
But Indiana's going to get in at 11-1 if they beat Purdue.
See, that's the thing. That's where you go into strength of schedule.
But they're going to get in at 11-1. And
you see, that to me, I mean,
they're getting in at 11-1.
I know. Look, you just mentioned South Carolina. I think South Carolina, you probably know this better than I do. South Carolina right now may be the best team in the SEC.
They're as good as anybody right now.
Good as anybody.
And when you look at that, they've had one bad loss, and it was to Ole Miss.
One game, one bad week.
But they had and anybody can have that. They had a bad, what I think was a bad call on an official's call that cost them a touchdown that would have nailed down a win over LSU early. And then, they controlled that game against Alabama, most of it, and one got away from them. They lost by 2 points to Alabama. Now maybe that's a
2-point conversion.
Maybe that doesn't look like something you want to argue about now. That Alabama's lost. You say, yeah, you mean that Alabama team that lost to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt?
Yeah. Right.
But it's just.
Well, that's the thing. Imagine that these little 2-point conversions attempts have really dictated. Texas A&M last week, South Carolina against Alabama, a 2-point conversion attempt.
You don't have to tell the Aggies. Of course, I guess the Aggies are partly responsible for those 2-point conversion attempts because everybody goes back and looks at an overtime game against LSU and say, we can't have that again. Now we have to overcorrect.
Yes. Yeah, they got to figure something else out, especially at least do one thing. Stop going back down to the opposite ends of the field and wasting everybody's time. If you're just going to do this, just get it over with. Just come on. 2 point. Anyway, this is why this game is going to be so fascinating, because a lot's going to be in stake. Just like you said, who knows what's going to happen with the loser or even the winner if they lose in the SEC championship game. But let's talk about the game itself. Okay. And that is the fact that Texas is a 5-point favorite, I believe, right now. Texas A&M almost a 2-1 money line play. And you could just see, look at all the statistics, and they all say, well, Texas is the better team. You know, they're what? They're one of the top-ranked teams in the nation as far as their offense, their defense. A&M is like middle of the road in both offense and defense. And is that where Texas A&M, though, is that where you probably – and I know there's two things that have really been, I guess, the most puzzling or disappointing things about the Aggies this year. The quarterback is number one. Everybody expected the quarterback situation that Wigman was going to have a really good season. And the other was the defense. I know the defense is fine, but the defense is not where Mike Elko thought they were going to be.
Yeah. From A&M perspective, the things you brought up, I was somewhat optimistic coming into the season. I was picking A&M win 9 games. Now, when I picked them, when I was projecting them, that was Auburn and South Carolina. It was supposed to be wins. So what do I know? But anyway, I was predicting 9 wins. And one of the reasons, or maybe even the main reason, was because Connor Wigman. They finally got a quarterback that they can rely on.
Yep.
And he had one good game. He was excellent against Missouri. And then he had a very mediocre game against Mississippi State, and then against LSU. It wasn't all on him, but he was struggling. And you probably saw the game. A&M was behind by a couple of scores in the third quarter, and about midway through the third quarter, they bring in Marcel Reed, and it all changes. And Reed's running and scoring touchdowns. I think they scored 5 straight possessions, and 4 were touchdowns. And it was so much just electricity that this redshirt freshman brought in. And I guess we always knew that he had that in him, but you're thinking, is he really ready? Well, it turns out he's ready. You know, he had played earlier in the year when Connor was hurt and did okay, but he didn't play like that. And I thought their issue, though, in losses at South Carolina and at Auburn, he could have played better against South Carolina. I thought he was really good against Auburn, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was the defense. And you're like, hey, this team had been relying on its defense so heavily all year, and all of a sudden it's gone. And you're kind of shaking your head and scratching, saying, what changed? What's going wrong? Well, Mike Elko will tell you the issues they have right now are the same issues they've had all year. It's just that, you know, Missouri, early in the game, they throw a deep ball, guy is wide open, touchdown. Oh, wait, there's a guy, lineman downfield. Let's bring it back. Another one is wide open. Quarterback missed him. So they're saying, yeah, we've been having issues that we're trying to deal with, and they've been there all year. You just didn't notice them because they won, or because, you know, the other team didn't capitalize. And what do you know? Lately, they're capitalizing. So as Mike said just yesterday, he said, look, we got to get it fixed. It's on me, and it shouldn't be at this, at this point of the year. We shouldn't be having the same trouble. Now, here's the deal. Going into this Texas game, I don't know if that's going to hurt them so much, because if you watch a lot of Quinn Ewers, he's not the deep threat of a quarterback. I mean, like anybody else, he's playing in the SEC. You give him a guy wide open downfield, he's going to get him. But his game is more the check downs and medium to short passes, and get him to where his guy can make something out of, can take a 10-yard pass and make it a 40-yard gain.
Sure. And he loves his tight end.
Yeah, and that may be even more worrisome for A&M if you've watched them try to tackle in the secondary lately. So the Aggies definitely have their work cut out for them, because they need to get a pass rush. That's one of the things they were doing so well early. The starters on A&M's defensive line, I think they've combined, if I'm not mistaken, for 1/2 a sack over the last 5 games.
That's
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah. Nick Scorton had a half a sack against LSU. Now he had 4.5 sacks after the Missouri game, and that was what, game 5 or 6?
Okay.
A half a sack since then. Shamar Stewart hasn't had a sack since maybe the third, or maybe Bowling Green, maybe. And you go back, Shamar Turner, hasn't gotten one. So they haven't gotten the productivity from that pass rush that really was expected to be the strength of the team. And if you're going to have success against Quinn Ewers, like Georgia did, you better get pressure on him. So that's, I think that's obviously really important, and obviously keeping guys in front of you. And then look, they're gonna complete passes. They're gonna complete. Texas is, but A&M's charge is when they get that 10-yard pass, make it a 10-yard pass, not a 40.
Make the tackle.
Yep.
And it's going to be a good matchup too for Scouton, because he's going to go up against one of the best tackles in Kevin Banks. So that could be a really nice matchup.
Yeah, I think he's probably the best tackle in college football.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people believe that.
I would not be surprised. In fact, I expect it that they're going to move Scorton all around. He may look at the other tackle more than he sees.
Yeah, probably.
But whatever it is, they're going to have to dial up. So they'll blitz. They'll come up with everything they can. But they're going to have to win some of these matchups that they haven't been winning. Otherwise, Ewers will pick them apart.
You get the feeling it's going to be, especially the way the A&M defense is broken down a little bit, that we're probably going to see more of a high-scoring game?
Well, if that's always possible, but I don't think so. I mean, look at Texas's scores. Yeah, I know they had 41 last week against Kentucky, and they put a bunch up on Florida. But I think the offenses that were so inept that they were playing against. Remember, I don't know what actually happened because I couldn't watch the game, but I know that Kentucky's starting quarterback didn't play very much in that game against Texas, and I know that Florida was down to their third string freshman quarterback making his first start.
Okay.
But, they go to Arkansas, it's 20-10. Vanderbilt was 27-20.
That's true.
27-24. It's not like they've been, just blowing out a lot of teams either. So I would think A&M's defense, if they have any pride left them at all, this will be their last great act of defiance, or at least for the regular season. They better, if they successful, better do it in the championship game. But, when you keep hearing how bad you are for a couple of weeks, a lot of times, again, if you have talent and some pride, you come back and play stronger than you have and get back to who you are. So we'll see if that happens. I don't, just by the nature of this game, and I know it's so much different because the guys, all the guys playing were 9 years old or younger the last time Texas and Texas A&M played. But just by the nature of the game, it's typically a close game, and I would expect it to be a close game. And I don't know if it's going to be a close game if A&M has to score, 35 or more to stay in contention. If you believe the numbers that are associated with Texas's defense, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, and again, schedule-wise, I mean, Texas has not had the most difficult schedule too. So who would you say outside of Scouton, who would be considered the top two or three defenders on the team? I mean, York is the leading tackler. He's only a true sophomore. I mean, this kid's already put up a ton of numbers in just his first 2 seasons. Would he be the second we considered like the leader of that back seven?
Yeah, I think so. I think Torian York, he's a nice player. He needs to be really good, and he typically is. But here's the deal with A&M's defense, right? And Torian plays into this. A&M's defense will win 9 plays out of 10, but that 10th one, and you can go look this up, that 10th one's probably going to be a 70-yard pass or a 50-yard run. They give up big plays in bunches, and it's not just throwing the ball, it's running. And very often when it's a running play, it's because the linebackers just didn't make the right fit to fill the gap. And that's a lot of times that's on him. So they just need more consistency from him. Like I said, he'll be involved in 9 straight positive plays. And then you probably saw it against Notre Dame. They were doing a heck of a job against Notre Dame's running game. And then boom, 2 long runs and you lose.
Yeah.
And
realize
both of those, they just didn't, the guys and the linebackers just didn't fit the holes right. So, but Torian is a good player and he needs to be really good. And he's definitely a key. If he has a strong game, then I think A&M defense will play well enough to win. If he struggles, A&M might be in trouble. Now, I will say this: Texas's running game, though capable, and I know you follow it more than I do. It's a good running game, but it's not a great running game.
Yeah.
So the run defense may not be quite as challenged as usual.
Yeah, they got sort of similar to Texas A&M. They have a trio of backs, but there's not that one guy that they've had in the past that you just go, wow, we got to worry about him. Yeah. Speaking of running backs for Texas A&M, Ruben Owens, I hear that it's possible that he may return some point.
They had him last week. Now he suffered an injury in August. They said, well, it's probably season ending. Maybe if you get into the postseason. Well, apparently he's healed up enough to where they could put him in practice and let him run around. And so last week on the injury report, he was first out and then he was upgraded to doubtful. He's like, okay, wait a minute, doubtful. And then we're wondering, is he going to show up questionable? And then they took him out again. So, and Mike Elko was kind of coy about it when asked about it this week. And normally I'd say, okay, that probably means he's not going to play. Except earlier this year, they had a guy, one of their receivers, Jabri Barber, was hurt. And we didn't know when he was going to be back. And he was asked about, hey, is he going to play in Florida? No, I don't know. He's not quite ready. And then he goes out and catches the first pass for a first down. So I'm not so sure that Mike isn't one to have a little gamesmanship out there. And that might be the case with Ruben. But if Ruben does play, of course, it'll be in a very much a backup role to Amari Daniels, who has played pretty well in place of the injured Le'Veon Moss. And besides, of course, if Ruben does play, it'll be his first carries of the year. And I don't know if you want your guy, you don't want to put too much on a guy in that.
Yeah. Could be inspirational, though.
It would be. And let's face it, the Aggies need all the inspiration they can get.
Yeah, absolutely. No question. And speaking of that offense, give me the one guy that if there's a big play you need to be made, is it definitely this guy? Is it definitely, say, Noah Thomas?
Oh, well, if you want to say besides Marcel Reed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Noah Thomas. Noah's that guy. He's a 6'6" junior receiver that A&M doesn't have a, quote, number one receiver, right? But the feelings always has been if one emerges, it'll be Noah Thomas. He has that ability. He just hasn't been that guy yet. We saw him turn a 15-yard out route into a 55-yard touchdown against Arkansas. He can do that. We saw him against LSU. Reed only completed 2 passes. He only threw 2, but one was like 50 yards to Noah. But you just don't see the consistency in him. Well, last week he goes out and he catches 5 passes for a career high 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that's when they were down 21-7. So he has 2 touchdowns, one of them 70-something yards, and they're tied again. But then you don't hear a whole lot from him after that. So, I think one of the shortcomings for A&M is a lack of explosiveness overall, but especially at the receiver position. But if anybody can provide it, if he's having a good game, it's Noah Thomas.
Yeah, I can just see here just way too many games where, he only has like 1 or 2 receptions. Yeah.
You can find some, and you'll say, hey, man, that's a good game for anybody. And then you'll find a couple others where he barely shows up. And some of that is on the guy throwing the ball to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, when you rely on a young kid like Reed, I mean, because when he's back there, you just don't know what's going to happen. You just don't. You don't know if it's going to be a good pass, a bad pass. It's going to run for 70 yards and a touchdown. It's going to throw the ball for 50 yards and a touchdown. You just don't know. It's
yeah, it really is. I mean, he's a fun guy to watch.
Yeah.
Unless he's dropping a snap, it's right at him.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. You don't even know if he's going to catch the snap, for crying out loud.
You know what? He had to play against Auburn, and Auburn's defense is actually not bad.
No, they're good.
And he was under a lot of pressure, and he kind of, danced his way out of it. And I think he's going to run, and then he pulls up and he throws a ball 25 yards downfield, hits his tight end in the chest with it, and they drop it.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
And it might have been the difference between winning and losing that game, quite frankly.
Right.
So he has so much ability, and you wonder if, he threw for 297 last week and ran for 66. And again, guys dropping passes, he could have been, up to 350 or more. You wonder if that was not the breakout game, and we'll see more of that consistently moving forward, freshman, but you certainly hope so from the A&M perspective.
You need it. No question. This is it. No more, prep games. No more, let's see what happens. This is it.
Yep.
It's only every game is going to decide whether or not you advance. And so before I let you go, by the way, I wanted to ask you about DJ Hicks. So, is that a player that just hasn't developed yet?
No, it's funny because we've asked about him, and they will tell you that he's playing well.
Okay.
But Albert Regis, a guy that's older than him, that's been around here for 4 years, has just he blossomed this year, and he's just playing so well they can't take him out of the lineup. I think coming into the year, we all expected DJ to be starting at defensive tackle next to Shamar Turner. I would have lost money on it, but Albert has probably been the most consistent defensive lineman all year.
Wow.
And I mean, he just makes plays. Not the most flashy guy out there, but he's been really consistently good. And when you bring up DJ, and Elko will say, we're happy with him. He's playing well when he's out there. And then he'll say, but you tell me why you would take out Albert. And there's really no rebuttal.
Well, that's the thing that kind of is, I guess, mind-boggling, is that, like you said, I mean, the talent's there. It's there. So there should be better results. And so maybe they'll get it. Well, starting on Saturday night, because the place is going to be bananas.
It's going to be bananas. Texas, and look, I know you don't win or lose the game because of the crowd, but
not really.
It can have an effect. And Texas has not this year been in a hostile environment at all that they're going to face today. They played a 2:30 game at Vanderbilt on the road. They played a 11 a.m. game on the road at Fayetteville. They were 11 a.m. against Michigan. Everybody will tell you the Big House is always the quietest 100,000 people.
Yeah, they are.
They played Oklahoma and Dallas half and half in the morning. They haven't played a night game on the road, and this is the first one. It's going to be a tremendous environment. We'll see how the Longhorns handle it. I'm sure they'll handle it fine. But, all that noise can be disruptive on a
sure.
player. Yeah.
And with this Texas team, let's remember that they lost a lot of premium talent. And so there are a lot of young players who needed to step up, and they have. But like you said, they haven't been in this environment yet. So anything's possible. That's why we love it. That's why college football is just so fun. College athletics, these kids, you never know what they're going to do for you. And let's just hope it's a real fun game. I'm sure it will be. Do you have a feeling about the game itself? You follow the team. for as long as you have. I know you get feelings from your own teams. You just do.
You do.
What's your feeling about Texas A&M on Saturday night?
Texas A&M plays well at home. They do. They didn't. Okay, they did since the season opener against Notre Dame, and Connor played the worst game of his life. If he'd have been average, they'd have won that game. But Texas A&M plays well at home, so I would expect them to play well at home again. And now I'll be honest, I wouldn't go to Vegas and bet on it. But I expect A&M to play a strong game, and if they play a strong game at home, they typically win. So I would probably, again, I ain't betting, but if I was, I would probably take A&M in the points. I think, what'd you say? It's 5.5? 5.5. Yeah, I think I would take A&M in the points. History shows or tells you to take the points, whoever's the underdog. Now, that said, again, how much will the game be like it has been in the past when you have guys that didn't grow up with the game and hating the other guy?
Yeah.
Because when you don't play and you don't see somebody for 12 or 13 years, it's hard to be mad at them.
Well, it's only Tuesday, so they still have a few days to figure out how to get mad at each other. So
especially when you look at A&M, and 8 of their potential starters on offense are from out of state.
Yeah, good point. That's it. It's a transfer era. That's why we're seeing it so crazy this year. That's why, in my opinion, when you hear guys like Feinbaum, I think he's stuck in last year and all those other years. It's like it's a different era. Yeah. Don't look at last year or all those other. It doesn't matter. This year, it's a completely different year. These are different teams. It's a different situation. I think we've seen the last of the dynasties, unless they change this format with the free agency, because you just can't have a dynasty. You can't have second string, third string, 4- and 5-star guys. They're not going to be backups. They're going elsewhere. So it's going to be hard.
Not unless you got $12 million to pay a quarterback.
Yeah, which, I know some of them do, but for the most part, it's a hard thing to do. And I think that's why it's going to make it really fun to watch college football, especially with a 12-team playoff. And, they'll probably tinker with it. I know you said 8, but they're going the other way.
No, they're going the other way. It'll be 16.
Yeah, they're going the other way.
Yeah.
And so look, we've been old enough to I don't know how you've been feeling about it. I've been wanting a playoff like this since I can just remember, probably 20 years, 30 years.
My son, who's 20 now, several years ago, we were having a discussion. We were talking about college football national champs. And I was explaining to him how it worked. And he's like, looking at me like I'm crazy. He said, They voted?
Yeah.
They didn't play? They voted? I'm like, yeah. We even thought it was insane then, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, my team, I had to deal with that co-national championship year with Nebraska.
Right.
When Michigan won.
Right.
I mean, I knew Michigan was the better team, but I had to hear about, they split the national championship and the coaches gave it to Nebraska and whatever. But those were the old days. The new is here. We're finally going to get a playoffs, and hopefully, for your sake, Texas A&M is going to be one step closer to getting to that first 12-team playoff if they can get the win on Saturday night. If they are, for some reason, they actually enter the playoffs, well, we're going to have to do this again.
I'll be glad to.
Olin, I appreciate it.
Eastern time.
I will. I'll do that. And we'll have links in the description where you can check out, again, TexAgs.com and anything else that we have related social media-wise to Olin. You can check it out in our description area. And, best of luck on Saturday night, Olin, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.